This is Streets and People, conversations about people and projects shaping how we move. Find us at getaroundcaboolture.au. Today we're doing one of our People and Projects episodes, and I am here in the studio with Pete Murray. I'm here on Gubbi Gubbi Country in Queensland in Caboolture. Pete, whereabouts are you?
On Garigal Country in northern Sydney.
I know Pete because you posted something on the Better Streets channel. I thought it was really good. It's the Learning to Walk Again project. And I just thought we all need to learn to walk again. So I thought, yep, let's get him on the show. And I know that you're associated with Lucy Saunders at Healthy Streets, and we've just had Lucy on the show a couple of weeks ago. So it's just perfect timing.
Yeah, I've done Lucy Saunders' Healthy Streets training courses, and she's contributed to this research.
What sparked your interest in this whole area, and why is it that this work matters to you personally?
First of all, as an urban designer, walkability is critically important for people's quality of life, your ease at which you can get around and access all kinds of everyday activities. The more things that you can walk to, the more healthy life you can enjoy. But also, as someone who's worked in outdoor education for a number of years, I've been enjoying taking kids and adults on camps and on activities, hanging off the side of a cliff and talking about leadership and teamwork and all of that sort of thing. So I have seen that kids can get a huge amount of learning benefit from outdoor education activities, but not every kid gets to do that sort of thing, and even the ones that do can have quite a fleeting experience with that in the context of their whole school education years. So I think it's really important to look at kids' development, the learning opportunities they get to have every day, and learning to walk to school is a really important way for kids to not only just have a healthy experience that is a great exercise every day and it prepares them for the classroom learning environment, but it also is a learning experience where they're learning to navigate their way in the world.
So that's what sparked your interest. So why is it that this work matters so much to you today?
In urban design, I've worked for the New South Wales State Government and also for public consultancies on a range of active travel and public transport projects. And walkability has been a really important factor in all of them. So I did a research project for the Heart Foundation of New South Wales looking at active travel to school, and I wanted to delve more deeply into this topic. And so I bid for what's called a Byra Hadley Travelling Scholarship. It's a travelling scholarship like the Churchill Fellowship. Both of these schemes are projects where you can propose a research topic, where you can learn from something that's happening that's really good to see elsewhere in the world and bring the ideas back home. And my travelling scholarship was to go to the UK and look at what they're doing to improve walkability, particularly for things that enable more kids to walk to school. And I went to London and Manchester and Edinburgh and saw a whole lot of really inspirational things there. And I would like for us to learn from the UK experience about how we can enable more kids to walk to school again.
That's very cool. So what is the UK doing to improve active travel? And active travel is just walking, riding a bike. Some people say scooters and others say not, so that sits in the grey zone. But basically anything that gets you out and about and active.
Yeah, and so we mustn't also forget all of the wheeled devices that people could use, and also the different kinds of bikes that people could use with various accessibility ideas in mind there. Both Australia and the UK have had a similar trend with fewer kids walking to school. And the UK has done seriously important things about this in the last 10 to 20 years. And that's something that we could learn a great deal from. I think we can also learn a great deal from great urban design cities.
So there's been this decline across the world for kids riding and walking to school. And in the UK, they've actually really tried to shift it back so that more kids can ride to school, walk to school, but they required some urban design changes, it sounds like. So what were those changes and what did you learn from that?
So the UK have been making a number of changes that when they're best, they're working in a really holistic way, but there's a whole set of specific things that they've been doing. And a lot of the times the changes are phrased as being for kids' sake, and this is something that helps people in the community be more accepting of these sorts of changes, that they're more readily to accept changes to streets when they're done to enable more kids to walk to school or to other places. But they're also framed as being changes that help everybody to have a better quality of life. So they're things like having safer speeds. When the speed limits are slower, there's less real risk of injury and death from car collisions. But also the street feels like a nicer place in terms of there's less noise and it's just a bit more pleasant environment. They've been making a number of street design changes, particularly on the streets around schools, things like school streets, making active neighbourhoods and even play streets. And they've also been helping people with social supports that give people more opportunities to walk and ride. It's a way of helping give people more options to move around their neighbourhood in ways that make whatever sense to them for whatever particular trips that they would like to do. So short trips can be a really fun and enjoyable way to be done when you're walking or riding bikes. So it's about enabling people to get around in as many different ways as possible.
So a school street is basically where they close off the street for a short period of time just at school drop off and pick up. And that allows children to have more space in the street and parents to feel more relaxed when the child is coming out. And instead of everybody going in this narrow space and trying to fit onto this narrow place, they get more dispersed further out. It's been very popular, certainly in Paris. And the safer street speeds, we did have Rod King on the show, and there's been a huge amount of really good outcomes from having 30 kilometres an hour. And it sounds really slow when you think, oh, I don't want to drive at 30 kilometres an hour instead of 50 kilometres an hour on my local streets, in my street outside my place. But it's usually only maybe a minute that you get added, which means everybody can feel safer, it's quieter. It just makes the whole place so much more enjoyable and pleasant to be around. So this global movement. So it sounds like, Pete, you've been looking at safer street speeds and how that works, and school streets.
Yeah, so a couple of ideas there. The safer speeds are a really normal thing in the UK, and that's something that we could normalise here. And in that environment, you're not necessarily spending more time that way, because a lot of the time spent in car traffic is speeding up and slowing down with all of the other people who are trying to drive around at the same time. Safer speeds are really important for enabling more kids to walk around, because a street needs to be a place that serves everybody's needs, and kids do need to be able to get around themselves. It should be seen as a fundamental right for kids to be able to navigate their way in their local environment. And so having speeds that are slower, that enables kids to walk and ride bikes more, and also to survive when they're going about and doing these things, it's a really important thing for kids. You also mentioned school streets there, and they've got more than 600 school streets in the UK. They've been very popular there. A lot of people say they support them. And school streets, they're actually about opening the street to people, if you think, rather than this idea about closing the streets from a car traffic point of view. This is opening the street to enable more people to walk and ride bikes and to have conversations and to hear the birds and all this sort of thing. And from an Australian point of view, with the streets outside local schools in Australia often being some of the most car congested and stressful street environments that we have, that converting one of those streets that's really failing to do its job into a street that's a joyful experience for people to go and enjoy and for kids to be free in is a really important thing. From a car traffic point of view, when it comes to people travelling to the school streets, one of the things that you can do to help improve the way that people travel to school, they're not going to get everybody to walk and cycle, because you're looking at a couple of local streets around any particular school or group of schools. You are inviting everybody to have at least a short walk or wheel or ride on their way to school. And by pushing the car traffic further away from the school, you're not only dispersing it, but you're also reducing it. In particular, you're giving a really obvious invitation to all of the parents who live within really short walking distance of school to, hey, would you like to start letting your kids walk or ride bikes to school now? Because one thing we haven't talked about is that the main problem that we're facing, the reason why fewer kids are walking to school, a trend that's going over decades, is because of car danger as being the number one problem. There are other factors involved, but car danger is the most concerning factor that's leading parents to think, oh, I'm not really comfortable letting my kids walk or ride bikes to school, or at least yet, maybe when they're older or that sort of thing. And the reason why car danger is a problem is because when more parents drive their kids to school in response to this danger, then you have more cars driving to school and you have more car danger. So it becomes a negatively reinforcing spiral. So the way that we need to deal with this is that we need to make substantial enough safety and health improvements to streets that show people, hey, this street is markedly safer and healthier place for people and for kids to walk and ride bikes now. So would you let your kids walk and ride bikes now? School streets are a way of showing people these streets that were heavily car congested and stressful and horrible spaces and now wonderful, joyous places. If you're within walking distance, why don't you let your kids walk and ride bikes to school now? And that substantially reduces the amount of car traffic that's travelling towards the school. And the people who still do drive to school can do drop-offs further away. And all of the kids can have a bit more walking on their daily trip to school.
That's a bit more relaxed. It's a bit less rushing to get to the front gate and this very narrow bandwidth. I know it's been very popular in the UK. So I don't know if you'd like to talk about that a little bit more or whether you'd like to talk about play streets, because I know you were involved with play streets as well. What would you like to share?
So kids used to play on streets all the time. It's a particularly important thing for older generations to have been involved in, and it's something that has decreased over time. And again, in response to car traffic, that people don't feel as comfortable as they did in the past about letting their kids play on the street. But it's a really normal thing to do for kids to play within a short distance of home and to play with their siblings and their neighbours. And play streets are a way of enabling that to happen again. So they're sessions that are run by the local community, by volunteers who would like to enable this to happen. And they can happen whenever the community would like to have them. It could be as a one-off to try it out. It could be every month as a regular activity. It could be every day during the school holidays if they would like to. But they're usually small sessions of maybe an hour or two duration. And the volunteers will put up, it could be beach chairs or bins or anything like that at the ends of the street to filter out car traffic. Or if people who are residents of the street need to drive in or out, then they can escort the people driving the cars in or out, so they're maintaining a safe environment for the kids to play, and it's enabling kids to play freely on the street. So this play experience is hugely important for kids to be able to play in their local environment. It's great for their parents because it enables the parents to get on with things at home. They don't necessarily need to be out on the street. Of course, they're more than welcome to be as involved as they would like. But they're also really important from a walking and cycling point of view because it's an opportunity for kids to build confidence and to learn skills on the street. So particularly things like learning to ride a bike on a play street is an ideal time to do it.
That's very cool. In our previous conversations, you've spoken about how important grassroots advocacy is to this process, that it's not really a top-down government to community thing, it's more community to government thing. So perhaps you would like to share who's been part of that grassroots advocacy and how it came about and how effective it was.
In the UK, the community advocates have played a really important role. A lot of schemes have happened because the community has demanded it. And they've, in more recent times, been doing more adventurous projects because the community has been saying, we want this to happen here. And previously, people had thought, maybe this is a tricky spot. Why don't we do these other ones first? The community who've said, no, we want this, we can make this happen, have been the ones who have enabled these things to happen. There's been quite a lot of community groups, and the contributors that I spoke to, a number of them have said about the important role that these groups have been playing. Things like Better Streets and Living Streets, Mums for Lungs, which have been talking about reducing the amount of air pollution on streets, particularly around schools, to create a healthier environment, an environment where kids can learn better in school as well. And people like Solve the School Run, who are working on how can we enable more people to walk and cycle, and what are the things that we can do to help this idea through all of the systems that we need to help. The community advocates have been playing a really important role. There's also been leaders at council level and at the level of city mayors who have said, we're going to do this. They've funded important streets changes. And when elections have come around, there's been a number of notable instances where the politicians who've said we're going to do something positive about enabling more people to walk and ride bikes have been rewarded in the election, even when these issues have been a hot topic in these elections, where you've got one side saying, no, we want less of this and we're going to pull these schemes out, and the other side saying, no, we're going to do more of this. People have said, no, we want safer and healthier streets.
That sounds very inspiring and encouraging. I will have to have some of those people on the show. If our listener is a mum with a couple of small kids, she's stay at home, she's got one child in kindergarten, one child at home, she doesn't really have time, she doesn't have money, and she's tired and fraught a lot of the time, what is something that someone in that position, really feeling quite challenged by so many demands on life, what is something they could do to help get more people walking to school and riding bikes?
Well, I would suggest the most important thing is to connect with your community, in particular the school community, to talk to other parents and to teachers and the school principal. People have commented in the UK that it really helps when you've got a school that's supportive of these things, because schools' environments, they're busy environments too when it comes to all of the academic things that they're looking after, that all of the things that happen within the school boundary. But a lot of educators do see their educational role as extending beyond the school boundary and helping to educate the whole child who's coming through their school. And it's particularly in that sort of context that you can assemble a really important case for change in that neighbourhood. So talking with other parents and with the school staff about the streets around the school and how safe and healthy people feel about these streets. You don't need to know about all of the different design solutions that are available. I can talk about a lot of them in the report. Putting them together is an exercise, I think, to work with the council. Yeah, forming a community around the school, I think, is a really important way of doing things.
One of our big supporters is a guy who lives with a lot of chronic pain, in insecure housing, and moves around a lot. And getting in touch with the community doesn't really know anybody in his local community. What would you suggest that he might be able to do?
For anybody who's living on a local street in any city or town, then talking to your neighbours about your street, and particularly if you've got kids on the street, having a play street session is a really great thing to do. You can talk to your council about play streets. Hopefully they've got a play street program, but some might have ways of encouraging street parties. And so you can have a street party for kids, play street in that sort of sense. Changing the way that we use local streets, even when we're not talking about the streets directly outside schools, is another important way of doing things. One of the ways that the councils help with this in the UK is that they've often got council staff who work in changing uses for the curbside space. So all the different ways that that's used in terms of bicycle parking and bike hangers, places for people to lock up their bikes, for charging different kinds of electric vehicles or bikes, for parklets where you have spaces for people to stop and rest, or planting or vegetable gardens, or all sorts of things. There's so many things that we can do in the curbside space on streets, and doing a whole bunch of different things with that space more and more over time shows people that our streets aren't just places to drive and park cars, but they show us that there's so many different things that streets can do to serve our everyday lives. And the more things that we can do on streets, the better.
If someone's junior in council, in the transport team or in the planning team, and they think, play streets would be really fun, school streets would be really fun, they're at the bottom of the food chain and quite disempowered, what is something that you suggest that they could do that might be helpful?
First of all, the bottom of the food chain idea is interesting in that the distance from decision making can be a disadvantage, but there's an advantage with people who have the opportunity to work more closely with the local communities. They get a whole lot more perspective from that experience, and decision makers would often want or need that kind of perspective to make good decisions. So I think we need to look at people who are working with other people in the grassroots as having a really important role that is really helpful. Councils can do a whole lot of things to support walking and cycling, and looking at things in a holistic way can really help. If your council is wanting to do things like making safer speeds, as a lot of councils around Sydney are doing at the moment, there's the opportunity to try and do as many good improvements at once as you can. So instead of just putting in speed bumps or chicanes to slow down cars, you can also install crossings, install planters, install bike parking and various other things that integrate with the other things that you're making changes in the street, but you're making the street wholly better for all kinds of activities. So I think some of the most important lessons that we can learn from London are trialling changes in the street is really important because it enables us to do things quickly and at low cost. And we can test it out in the street, we can move things around and see which works best. And the other reason why trials are really important is it enables people to experience the benefits that changing streets can bring. So it's a different kind of engagement. We know in all kinds of urban design and planning practice that there's problems with the current engagement systems, that it's hard to connect with people who are busy, and you don't always get a really broad sample of people when you do reach out to people in the community. So engaging in the street is actually a really good way of doing engagement because it helps you to get more perspectives from more everyday people, including from kids. So yeah, it enables you to change a street for the better and then to ask people, what do you think of this? How does this work for you? And they've also been measuring streets before and after making changes and building a really important case for how these changes have worked and how much benefit that they've brought people. And that's reminiscent of Copenhagen, actually, when Copenhagen has been making changes in improving walkability since the 60s. One of the reasons they've been doing that so well is because when they've made a street more walkable, they've counted people and said, look, there are more people walking now and there's more people shopping and all that sort of things. The changes that you make when you're showing the evidence that you've gathered that this works, it proves the benefits of what you're doing.
And so just the last question, is there anything else you would like to add before we close out? Perhaps you'd like to share if people want to get in contact with you or anything else that I should have asked and I just didn't.
I think the most important message that I would like to say is that we need to make a meaningful difference. We've got this negatively reinforcing spiral where more people are driving because more people are driving. And to change that, we need to make substantially safer and healthier streets. And doing this, the UK has shown us that it can be done in ways that's fun and joyful and that people will support. So kids have a right to the public realm, and when we show people the benefits of improving streets, particularly for kids' sake, then they're much more likely to see what this is all about. So my research report is called Learning to Walk Again. It's published on my website, learningtowalkagain.org. And you can also get in touch with me there if you'd like.
Of course, I'll have that in the show notes as well on our website too. So that's about it. Thank you very much for taking the time. I know that you've got plenty of other things to do than just this. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experiences with what you saw and felt in the UK and what you learnt with us here in Caboolture and elsewhere, wherever our listener is. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. If you can find something that you care about and want to improve that particular thing, whether it's enabling more kids to walk or improving air quality on streets or making your street more flood resistant because you get a giant puddle every time it rains, or whatever it is that matters to you, making a change in that particular thing is a really important thing that you can do. And for inspiration, I think that you're doing a great job with this podcast and talking to some really interesting people who've got really great evidence for the various arguments that they're making. And so I think the things that you're doing are really helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm actually really inspired by other advocates because everybody plays to their strength. So Charles Morone at Strong Towns, he's an engineer, so he started off with blogs and he brings all his engineering background and transport engineering background. But likewise, Sarah Stace has been in government and she does a lot of stuff on better streets and she knows how to engage the community. Everybody does what they can that suits them best, and mine is talking to people, and so that's what I do. But I would encourage our listener, no matter what they feel they're good at, no matter how small, just to give it a go and see if you can chat with somebody else. If you don't do it, nothing's going to change. That's the truth of it, unfortunately. No one's going to do it for you. So I think you just have to give it a go and see what happens. Maybe someone else will join you along the way. All right. Thanks so much, Pete.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
That's Streets and People. Thanks for listening. You can find more at getaroundcaboolture.au.